The listing looked like a joke at first, buried between obsolete drone frames and rusted shuttle shells. A nameless lot number, one blurry image, and a price so low it felt like a typo. A single-line description read, "Unidentified derelict vessel. Condition unknown. Sold as is for scrap." Most bidders ignored it. The auction hall didn't bother to display it on the main board. But something about that silhouette. Something about the smooth, non-human curvature of its hull made the back of the human bidder's mind itch with ancient curiosity, the same ancient instinct that once pushed our ancestors beyond the horizon and into the dark, so he followed that instinct, through the industrial smog of the scrapyard district. He walked alone, boots crunching against flakes of oxidized metal, cutting through a labyrinth of half-dismantled engines and cracked starship ribs. When he reached the lot, his breath stalled. The vessel was enormous, far larger than the photo implied, and nothing like any human, alien, or hybrid design known to the last 5 centuries of flight. Its hull was grown, not forged. Smooth like obsidian, cold like a void tombstone. Symbols shimmered faintly across its surface, pale silver runes that rippled like bioluminescent algae reacting to each step he took. The auction clerk didn't care. "Take it or leave it," they grumbled, waving a scanner. No one else bid. "You want it, it's yours." So he bought it, 1,000 credits, the price of a used food processor. He stood before it long after the workers had gone home, staring at the Leviathan shape towering above him. A breeze swept dust across the plateau as he reached out and touched the hull. The symbols rippled like water disturbed by a fingertip. The ground trembled, just once, as if the ship exhaled. He whispered into the night, "What are you?" The entrance opened on its own, not with gears, not with hydraulics, just a soft shift of geometry, the hull parting like petals unfolding beneath moonlight. Light spilled out, a soft white glow that wasn't harsh or artificial but strangely warm. Human-like. Welcoming. He stepped inside. The interior was impossibly pristine, untouched by age or decay despite the vessel's obvious antiquity. The corridor walls were smooth and dark, pulsing gently with threads of silver light. They seemed to react to him, sensing his movement, illuminating gently beneath his fingertips when he brushed them. He moved deeper until he reached what could only be the bridge, and then he froze. Suspended above the center of the chamber floated a crystalline sphere, rotating slowly, projecting a holographic map of a starfield he had never seen. Not just unfamiliar, impossible. Stars in configurations no astronomical catalog recorded. Nebula formations in colors never observed. Coordinates that didn't match anything in the charted universe, a ship older than human history, a map of a place no one had ever documented, and a pilot seat shaped for a species tall, elegant, long vanished from time. The air hummed and the sphere's light intensified. A gentle voice, not words, but a feeling, filled his mind. "You awaken me." His breath caught, the lights brightened, the ship pulsed beneath him like a heart restarting after centuries of silence. Outside, the scrapyard's night lights flickered as dust rose into swirling patterns around the hull. He backed away from the sphere, stumbling. But the ship reassured him with a calm pulse, like warm hands steadying his shoulders. The vessel wasn't broken, it wasn't abandoned, it was waiting for someone who didn't know what he had just inherited, waiting for a pilot who didn't realize the galaxy would soon panic when they learned what he had found, waiting for the first human in recorded history to stand inside a mythical precursor starship thought to be long extinct. And as the ship's systems awakened, power flowed, engines whispered to life, and long-dormant star charts reconfigured around him. 1. Truth became clear: humanity had just gained a weapon, or a miracle, or a threat that would reshape the galaxy. He didn't yet know which, but as the bridge lit up in breathtaking silver, he realized one thing with chilling clarity. They weren't scrapping this ship, not now, not ever. The ship did not fully awaken at once. It stirred slowly, like a giant remembering it had bones. Soft pulses moved through the walls, each one deeper than the last, as though the vessel was testing its own heartbeat after 1,000 dead years. The human stood in the center of the bridge, feeling the vibrations travel up through his boots and into his chest. he whispered again, almost without realizing it. "Can you understand me?" A shimmer passed through the crystalline sphere. A soft tone answered, not a word, not a translation, but an acknowledgement. He felt it directly in his mind, gentle and ancient. The ship wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking around him, its consciousness brushing the edges of his thoughts like a warm hand testing the temperature of water. Then the runes across the walls flared brighter. For a moment, shadows twisted into shapes from legends, tall, slender figures with elongated limbs, moving like dancers through corridors of light. Echoes of the species who built this vessel. They were beautiful, almost painfully so. But their images flickered like memories struggling to surface, fading before he could grasp more. He stepped closer to the sphere. The holographic starfield shifted, zooming into a region he didn't know. A cluster of red giants pulsed like angry eyes. A trail of markers spiraled toward them, coordinates. Pathways, ancient navigation lanes. He reached out. The lights gathered around his hand as if the ship were studying him in return, a pulse of light, a soft thrum, then something new appeared, a single star, glowing blue at the edge of the projection. His heart skipped. He knew that star, everyone did. Soul, wait. "You've been here before," he whispered. The sphere confirmed with a soft buzz of light. His stomach tightened. This ship, this impossible relic, had visited humanity's home system long before humans ever left their cradle. Before Earth even knew what a starship was, this vessel had drifted between its planets like a silent observer, and that meant something far more terrifying. It knew Earth, it knew humans, it recognized him the moment he touched its hull. But why? The sphere dimmed then flared sharply. Red light washed across the map. A warning. A threat. In the distant star clusters, far beyond human borders, symbols of danger appeared. He watched as one system after another shifted to crimson, like embers igniting with hostile intent. "What am I looking at?" he asked. He didn't need the ship to answer. He could feel the truth rising inside him like ice water. Someone, or something, was moving, something powerful enough to trigger a warning in a ship built by a civilization older than recorded history. A deep rumble echoed through the hull. Plates shifted. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, scavenger drones zipped backward as the vessel sank deeper into the ground, its landing gear adjusting, stabilizing, preparing for what? He ran to the entrance ramp just as it sealed shut behind him with a soft whisper of metal. Panic shot through him. "Hey! Open! I didn't tell you to." A soft pulse radiated from the walls. A calm feeling washed over him, soothing but overwhelming, like the ship was placing a finger gently over his lips. The engines hummed, the scrapyard around them trembled, floodlights flickered as power levels drained into the ship's hungry systems. Then it lifted, quietly. Effortlessly. Like gravity meant nothing, workers below screamed and ran as the scrapyard wind howled around the rising Titan. Machinery toppled. Sparks burst from overloaded generators. He stumbled back onto the bridge, gripping the railing as a shockwave of light rippled off the hull. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Stop! People are down there." But the ship was already rising through the cloud of metal dust, engines glowing brighter than twin suns. Its purpose was awakening. Its mission, ancient and buried, pulled it forward with unstoppable weight. He felt it again, that voice, that presence, pressing softly into his mind. Not anger, not malice, not even urgency, just inevitability. "You awakened me. Now we move." And as the colossal shadow ascended into the night sky, leaving the scrapyard trembling in its wake, he realized a horrifying truth. He wasn't driving the ship was taking him. The hangar lights hummed above me as I stepped back into the ship's shadow, the echo of the day's discovery still racing through my veins. The Aurora's hull seemed to breathe in the dim glow, its ancient metal warming under my palm like something alive, something grateful to be touched again. The deeper I explored, the more the ship felt less like a machine and more like a memory waiting to be spoken aloud. I could almost feel her awareness stirring, faint as a whisper under the noise of the universe. I walked along the central corridor, following the faint golden pulse running beneath the floor. It reacted to my presence, brightening with each footstep, almost guiding me, almost urging me forward. I stopped at a sealed partition carved with sweeping symbols that looked like constellations rearranged by a poet. As my fingers traced the curves, the symbols pulsed once, twice. And then the door dissolved into shimmering particles. A vast chamber opened before me. What I first saw wasn't machinery. It was art. Floating holographic constellations drifted like slow-moving nebulae, each one forming a map so old the stars themselves might have shifted since. Strange crystalline pylons rose from the floor, humming softly with harmonics that resonated through my ribs. The walls were lined with memory threads, delicate strands of light that moved like water, each showing flickers of battles, journeys, civilizations I didn't recognize, but at the center of it all was the heart, a sphere of radiant silver blue, suspended by magnetic lines, rotating gently as if it were listening to the cosmos. As I approached, the sphere opened like a blooming flower, revealing a core swirling with star-like particles. The air vibrated, and the temperature dropped, like stepping into the silence of deep space. A voice entered my mind, not spoken, not heard, simply appearing. A feeling more than a message. A sensation of searching, of waiting, of longing. The Aurora remembered. It showed me fragments, starfields burning, colossal machines drifting through ruined systems, a fleet vanishing into the dark, a final desperate act to preserve what was left of a dying civilization. The ship wasn't just a relic, it was a survivor. And now, it was asking if I would help it continue its purpose. When the vision faded, I found myself kneeling, breath ragged, hands trembling. I'd seen centuries of history compressed into seconds. I felt smaller than I ever had in my life, yet somehow chosen. I rose to my feet slowly, gazing into the core as its light synchronized with the rhythm of my heartbeat. Humanity had always believed itself to be young, fragile, unprepared for the vastness beyond. But as I stood there, I felt a quiet truth settle into my bones. Maybe we weren't chosen because we were strong. Maybe we were chosen because we refused to give up. Suddenly, the ship shuddered, the Aurora-like lights flickered. Warning glyphs flicked to life across the chamber. Something outside had changed. I ran to the nearest terminal as it projected a real-time scan. The scrap company drones had arrived early. They were cutting through the auction locks. They were preparing to dismantle the ship. They had no idea what they were destroying, and I had no intention of letting them touch her. I sprinted back toward the cockpit as the ship's systems awakened around me, lights sparking to life, panels sliding open, conduits humming like resurrected veins. The Aurora wasn't just waking up, she was reacting to danger, and for the first time in centuries, she wasn't facing it alone. The heartbeat of the ship grew louder as I hurried through the corridor, the lights shifting from soft gold to a deep, urgent crimson. The Aurora's systems were aligning, power grids weaving themselves back into place, dormant conduits crackling awake like nerves rekindled after centuries of sleep. I could feel the thrum of the engines through the floor even though they were still cold, as if the ship were stretching after a long slumber. Preparing itself for what came next. Outside, metal clanged against metal in irregular rhythms. Through the cockpit's fractured viewport, I saw the shadows of the scrap company workers moving across the hangar like vultures circling a dying animal. Heavy cutters glowed with blue fire, carving at the outer plating of the docking seal. They were minutes from forcing entry. They were minutes from tearing apart something sacred, but the Aurora responded before I could. The central console lit up, panels sliding into configurations they had never shown before. A hollow interface spiraled upward, forming a lattice of symbols and pathways that felt instinctively navigable, as if the ship had reshaped itself for me. A soft hum flowed through my thoughts, urging calm, urging focus. The danger wasn't just physical. The ship was scared. And that fear pulsed through the link it had formed with me. I placed both hands on the interface. The surface rippled beneath my touch, warm and alive. The system recognized me not with a code, but with intention. And in the moment I accepted the connection, the Aurora opened fully, energy surged through the hull, lighting the entire cockpit with a sweeping wave of blue-white luminance. The ship's shields flickered to life for the first time in hundreds of years. External clamps released themselves, ancient mechanisms groaning as they protested, but relenting all the same. The hangar floor vibrated as the Aurora lifted a few inches from her support cradle, held aloft by a soft gravity-disruptive field. Then the cutters breached the lock. A shower of sparks burst inward as the scrap workers pried the section open, raising their lights, confused as the glow washed over them. They expected rust and decay. They expected a corpse. They found a living star. The Aurora pushed outward with a burst of radiant force, a shock wave of shimmering particles that rippled through the hangar. Tools and carts went skidding across the floor. Workers staggered back, yelling, scrambling behind machinery. Some fell to their knees in awe as the ship hovered, glowing, fully awakened in a way no human vessel ever could. But the blast wasn't an attack, it was a warning. The ship didn't want to harm them, it just refused to die. I sank deeper into the interface, letting the ship's consciousness blend with mine. Images flashed through my thoughts, escape trajectories, shield amplifiers, ancient navigation charts, all rearranging into a single idea: run. The hangar doors were sealed, reinforced with industrial plating meant to withstand heavy cargo impacts. The Aurora analyzed every centimeter of the structure in an instant, calculating an exit. The engine spun, coils winding with brilliant arcs of energy, and the ship tilted, aligning itself with a narrow maintenance shaft too small for anything its size. Too small for anything except something built by a civilization that warped space like clay. The plating on the ship's nose shimmered, softened, then became almost fluid. The Aurora reshaped itself, compressing its form, streamlining its hull as if reality had remembered it was negotiable. The shift was silent, elegant, terrifying in its beauty. Alarms blared across the hangar as the ship angled downward. Workers dove out of the way. The maintenance shaft lit up with emergency warnings as the Aurora prepared to launch through a path no human craft could even attempt. I felt the ship waiting for my confirmation, one thought, one intention. I gave it. The engines ignited, gravity broke. The ship leapt. We shot through the maintenance tunnel, metal screaming around us as sparks showered like comet tails. The walls blurred, the world roared, and for a heartbeat I felt weightless, caught between the fear of death and the thrill of the impossible. Then the Aurora burst through the outer hull of the hangar into open sky. The cold wind whipped across the viewport. The horizon stretched out below us in sweeping blues and silvers. The ship steadied itself, wings were forming, hull sealing. For the first time since I'd stepped aboard, the Aurora truly breathed, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere among the stars. The wind howled across the ship's skin as we climbed higher, slicing through the morning clouds like a blade of living light. The engines hummed with a confidence that grew stronger with every kilometer we gained, as though each moment of freedom restored another piece of the Aurora's ancient soul. The ship didn't fly, it ascended, carried by a grace that defied the rules humanity had always sworn were unbreakable. But liberation was never quiet. Beneath us, alarms echoed across the industrial district. The scrap company sent drones buzzing into the sky like angry insects, their engines whining as they locked onto our trajectory. Red tracking beams swept across the clouds, scanning, hunting. The Aurora sensed them before I even noticed the movement on the radar displays. A ripple of emotion pulsed through our link, a blend of irritation and weary determination, as if this was a problem the ship had solved 1,000 times before. Panels shifted along the cockpit walls, unfolding new controls, offering me choices that felt both intuitive and impossibly advanced. I didn't know what half of them did. The ship guided my hand without force, only suggestion, a gentle thought pressing against mine. I tapped a control that resembled a shimmering ring of light. The shields blossomed outward like a translucent flower. The drones fired a volley of magnetic harpoons, crackling projectiles meant to latch onto hull plating and disable engines. The shields absorbed the hits with ripples, bending the energy outward until the magnetic pulses scattered harmlessly into the wind. The drones regrouped, forming a tight cluster preparing a synchronized strike. The Aurora didn't give them the chance. with a sudden surge, the ship twisted in midair, banking sharply to the right. The world flipped sideways for a heartbeat, clouds spinning past the window before the horizon snapped back into place. The drones overshot, spiraling past us in chaotic confusion. They tried to recover, but the Aurora was already moving again, tracing spirals in the sky like a dancer refusing to be cornered. I felt exhilaration rush through me, my own, and the ship's. We broke through the last cloud layer into the upper atmosphere. The sky darkened, deepening into a velvet blue. The curve of the earth shimmered far below. The Aurora slowed for a moment, as if considering the universe above us, then whispered a single intent into my thoughts. Up. The engines flared, the air around us distorted, we climbed, clouds fell away. The blue thinned into black. The stars emerged, cold, sharp, impossibly bright. It felt like stepping from the confines of a prison into a cathedral carved from eternity. The Aurora's hull glowed with soft golden lines as ancient systems awakened fully, no longer hindered by gravity's weight. A low melodic vibration coursed through the ship, resonating in my bones, then something else stirred. Far above, in orbit, a shadow drifted into view, no human satellite, no drone, nothing crafted by any earthborn hand. A massive shape, sleek and obsidian, emerged slowly from behind the limb of the planet. Its silhouette swallowed starlight. Symbols like burning silver ran along its surface. The air in the cockpit grew colder, the Aurora's lights dimming with unease. Recognition hit me through the link, not a word, a memory. The vessel above was a hunter, one of the entities the Aurora had fled centuries ago. A deep pulse resonated through space, like the beat of a cosmic drum. The alien ship oriented toward us, its colossal frame dwarfing everything around it. I felt the Aurora brace itself, fear-laced with defiance, like a wounded animal standing its ground despite the size of the predator before it. Energy gathered along the hunter's belly, brightening into a dangerous crimson gleam. It was preparing a shot. A lethal one. The Aurora showed me a path, an idea rather than a maneuver. Something humans would call impossible. We could bend, not space, not light, ourselves. I accepted before I even understood. The ship shimmered, the hull liquefying into radiant strands. The world around us warped, stretching like molten glass. A soft ringing filled my ears as the Aurora shifted into a form that wasn't solid, wasn't liquid, wasn't anything humans had vocabulary for. The hunter's weapon fired, a beam of red annihilation tearing through space, and passing straight through us. We were not where we appeared. Reality snapped back. The alien vessel recoiled in confusion. The Aurora steadied itself, pulsing with fierce energy. The link between us blazed with a single emotion. Stronger, sharper, more human than anything I expected from a machine built by a dead civilization. Hope. We turned toward the unreachable horizon. We ran. The stars streaked into long white threads as the Aurora hurled itself across the void, pushing far beyond speeds any human craft had ever survived. Space folded around us in shimmering arcs, bending like glass under heat. I could feel the strain humming through the ship's structure, a low trembling tension, yet beneath it all. The Aurora radiated something like exhilaration, as if escaping the grave had restored a purpose it thought forever lost. But the hunter was relentless. Its massive silhouette reappeared behind us, bursting out of warped space with a predatory lunge. Shockwaves rippled outward from its arrival, shaking the Aurora's hull. Crimson lights ignited along the hunter's armored plates as it prepared another strike. It gained on us with chilling ease, as though our desperate sprint through bent starlight amused it. The Aurora's fear filled my mind like icy water. Not panic, memory. That ship had ended its creators. Had driven it into exile. Had followed it for centuries. And now, revived and reborn. We'd flown directly into the jaws of the thing it had spent lifetimes escaping. I reached toward the control interface, though I didn't know what to do. The ship felt my uncertainty and steadied me with a pulse of warmth, not reassurance, but trust. It wasn't asking me to save it, it was asking me to choose. The hunter fired, a lance of violet energy speared toward us. The Aurora twisted violently, the universe tilting sideways as we spun past the beam by a margin that felt smaller than a heartbeat. The pulse sheared a trail through space itself, tearing a glowing scar that bled particles of light. We couldn't outrun it, we couldn't outgun it. The Aurora showed me images, glimpses of its past. Its creators marching proudly. Their cities glittering like constellations. Their final stand against the Hunter's fleet. And in the ruins, the Aurora launched alone, carrying the last whisper of a civilization extinguished. It had survived by fleeing, but humanity didn't run from monsters. We made them regret coming. Without words, I pushed my intent back through the link. Not escape, fight. The ship hesitated. Not in fear, but in soul-deep disbelief. No one had ever stood for it before. The Aurora's engines dimmed, then flared with blinding light as it executed a maneuver that defied physics and sanity alike. Instead of fleeing forward, the ship folded backward, performing a reversal so impossible my vision shattered into white static. The universe spun, and suddenly we were behind the Hunter. The Predator froze in confusion. The Aurora surged upward on an arc, positioning itself above the alien ship. For the first time, I saw a weakness, a seam near the center of its armored spine where the silver runes dimmed. The Aurora directed my hand to a crystalline control embedded in the console, a weapon awakened, not human, not kinetic, not energy, something older, something meant to unmake, not destroy. A sphere of shimmering distortion formed beneath us, its edges rippling like oil on water. The Hunter tried to turn, but it was too slow. The sphere detonated downward in absolute silence. The runes on the alien hull flickered, sputtering like dying stars. The seam split open. The entire vessel convulsed, then the Hunter cracked apart, folding inward, not exploding, but collapsing into a single point of impossible color, vanishing like a dying thought. The void became quiet, too quiet. The Aurora listed to one side, exhausted. Its lights dimmed to faint embers. I felt its consciousness fading, not in fear, but in peace. It had finished a battle centuries overdue. I placed my hand on the console. The ship warmed slightly, recognizing the touch, grounding itself in the presence of the one creature that hadn't abandoned it. We drifted above a canvas of distant galaxies, suspended in a silence that felt almost sacred. The Aurora spoke to me, not in words, not in sound, but in the slow blooming of an idea. Home wasn't a place, home was whoever refused to leave you behind. I adjusted our course toward the nearest star, feeling the ship gather itself for one more leap. Together, we flew into the light.